Your corporate strategy team has come up with a strategic plan, where they use classic techniques like Porter's 5 forces or a magic 8 ball. It's your job as a risk manager to provide independent challenge and stress tests of their strategy. This is commonly done using a technique called wind tunneling. Metaphorically, pop the strategy into a wind tunnel and turn up the wind machine of alternative future scenarios to see what breaks. Designing these future scenarios is a critical step in the emerging risk framework. But how are you supposed to do it? Counter to popular belief, it's actually not about predicting the future. Rather, it's about systematically exploring the range of possibilities. Allow me to be your guide in 2 common ways of designing future scenarios and show you how they can be used to assess the resilience of your company's strategy. Hi, I'm Bruce Choi, Professional Risk Manager. This is part 2 on the series of emerging risk assessments. In part 1, I outlined the most common mistakes I normally see in emerging risk assessment frameworks. To recap, the 3 tips were: Number 1, think about disruptions and not risks. Risk of loss comes from emerging technologies or disruptions. It's about understanding the range of futures. We'll spend more time on this in this video. Number 2, explore possibilities, not probabilities, and disengaging stakeholders from needlessly debating about chances. And number 3, backcast pathways instead of forecasting futures. To take advantage of how human brains are wired as better anthropologists rather than clairvoyants. It's a technique for seeking those important black swan risk events. The full discussion from part 1 can be found in the link up here. Now let's expand on assessing disruptions with 2 different methodologies on generating alternative future scenarios in order to stress test one strategy. Let's be clear, this is not for strategic planning. This is for emerging risk assessment. Techniques used by both are similar, but the scenarios are quite different. Strategic planning relies on forecasts of what's most likely going to happen. Risk assessment relies on foresight on what is possible. Dator's 4 archetypes. In the early 1970s, Professor Jim Dator of the University of Hawaii published an article on what he called the 4 archetypes of alternative futures. He called these futures continued growth, collapse, discipline, and transformation. Continued growth tends to be the official forecast scenario, the compound interest growth scenario where rates of return are expected to stay steady in the near future. Archetype 2 is discipline. Eventually there will be a saturation point. Growth is naturally constrained, be that from market capacity or resource constraints. It could simply be that there are only 24 hours in the day depending on the type of economic activity, or a dependency on key personnel. This is often viewed as the harvest period, where yields don't grow and discipline is required to keep expenses in check. Collapse is being on the wrong end of a disruption. A competitor comes in to eat your cake. A market assumption you make fails to manifest. An unforeseen systemic event such as COVID-19 directly and negatively impacts your business model. The final archetype is transformation. Similar to collapse, except for you're the beneficiary of the disruption. Often it's your own doing, whereby a technological investment pays off, or you've assessed the market trend before it occurs. But it may also just be because a competitor missteps. These generic alternative futures form the basis of 4 scenarios in which you can explore the impact of possible disruption. Let's have a look at an example. From your emerging risk hit list, let's choose what's going to happen post-COVID-19. Here I'm actually going to reference the excellent work done by futurist Leah Zaidi. Leah used Dator's archetypes to describe 4 post-COVID worlds. Her continuation archetype is called Detoured Back, in which the world tries to go back to the slow accumulation state prior to the disruption, similar to ignoring those lessons of MERS back in 2015. Her discipline archetype is called Keep Calm and Carry On. It's a scenario that recognises there's a fundamental shift happening in the world, and more top-down control will most likely happen, as the world shifts to a new normal, protected supply chains, and a step back from hyperglobalism. The collapse archetype she's called Vicious Circles. It's a future in which infectious diseases continue to repeat with regularity, and it's compounded with other global issues, such as natural disasters and geopolitical risks. And finally, she has a transformation archetype called We Not Me. It's one of global cooperation using the post-COVID recovery as a tipping point to create a more equitable and empathetic society. Zaidi then dives in and creates highly detailed narratives for each scenario. Being an optimist, let's have a look at the transformation example, We Not Me. Looking at it from a political angle, we move more towards democratic socialism. Education systems reform for more equity. Internet access is viewed as a human right. Change roles for supranationals such as the United Nations, and enshrinement of broader definition of what is an essential worker. Economic changes will look at universal basic income, policies for wage gap closing such as CEO multiple caps and inheritance tax, and shift away from manufactured consumerism. On the environmental side, expansive protection of natural resources, sustainable consumption habits, and a post-oil energy cycle. For technology, we see increased funding in science, health, leading to a boon in research knowledge and innovation, and rapid digitization of services. And finally, on the social side, equity and diversity is celebrated, giving rise to things such as Eastern and Indigenous spiritual practices. Multi-generational learning is reimagining education, conscientious travel with a focus on carbon footprint, and celebration of new heroes, less on influencers and more on care providers. For full details on this and the other archetype scenario narratives, click on the link above. Needless to say, this alternative future looks and feels totally different to a collapsed alternative future. And that's exactly what we're going for, testing out the extremes in our hypothetical wind tunnel to see whether our institution strategy is brittle or resilient by using this tool as a way to probe for weaknesses. The second most commonly used technique is a simple one called the 2x2 Scenario Matrix. Let me dive into an example straight away. The following is from the UK Ministry of Defence report on global strategic trends. It's a model for alternative futures relating to geopolitical risk. Two factors of high impact and high uncertainty in geopolitics are, number one, whether there will be more competition or cooperation around the globe, and number two, whether we will continue with a limited set of powerful states, or in the future we'll see a diffusion of power. This leads to four very different alternative future worlds, of which the MOD labels multilateralism, multipolarity, fragmentation, or a network of actors. The report then dives into detailed narratives for each alternative world, giving stories about what would happen to the environment and resources, human development, economy, industry and information, governance and law, and conflict and security. For details of these alternative futures and the full MOD report, the link is up here. I find the 2x2 scenario building is an easy tool and very intuitive one to explain to stakeholders. Indeed, it's my preferred emerging risk scenario building tool. The process starts with a brainstorming session and ranking the uncertainties by impact. The two uncorrelated drivers are then chosen from this exercise to set up the matrix. A workshop goes into these to explore what the world looked like from an anthropological study. The great thing about this process is it forces participants to work towards extremes, rather than naturally gravitating towards a central equilibrium. The process would generate narratives for totally different futures and helps inspire creativity rather than groupthink. The Dator archetypes and the 2x2 scenario matrix are two simple tools that can be applied to each identified emerging risk in order to independently challenge the robustness of your corporate strategy and fulfill your role as a risk manager. Although the examples I've selected were macro and global, the same techniques can be applied to smaller local scale disruptions. The critical thing is that these should not be seen as forecasts, but rather tools to generate foresight in order for you and your organisation to be future ready.